welcome. It's a pleasure to have everyone here, and it's great to see these women as well as the men, because we are certainly about gender diversity and equality, so this is fantastic. Thank you, and I have to say, just being here at U.S.-Japan Council and seeing some of the speakers this morning and some of the powerful women, Governor Koike, Yuko Kaifu, and of course the founder of U.S.-Japan Council, the late Irene Hirano, who really was an incredible powerhouse and has really brought this organization forward, and to be in person and be reconnected is just amazing. To introduce myself, Rona Tison. I'm with Itoen. I'm the Executive Vice President of Corporate Relations and PR for Itoen North America. I am half Japanese and American, and spent a lot of time growing up in Hawaii and in Japan and also Okinawa, so it was kind of great to hear Governor Ige talk about Okinawa. And I have to say that, many people ask me, they say, well, how's it being a woman working for, Itoen, being kind of a company with Japanese roots? Well, I wouldn't be here today if I did not have the support and respect from, I'd have to say Mr. Honjo, who is our CEO and president. And but, not to say that I'm aware there are a lot of challenges, in the world of business, period. So it's great to have these incredible two powerhouse women that I'm humbled and honored to be able to moderate today. And to give you a little background, I actually started my career in hotel hospitality industry when I was at college. I was a tour guide for Japan Airline Tours, ended up, in operations management, communications, and then moved in with my food and beverage background into retail and met Itoen, and was absolutely thrilled to be a part of something that was very close to my heart, my heritage, as I was somebody who loved unsweetened tea, grew up on oyocha, so I hope you'll continue to enjoy tea. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce, and honestly, I got to know both Yuko and Katrina just briefly, but I'm just wowed and amazed. They both have really unique experiences, quite different in their journey, and hopefully we'll get to hear directly from them, and they'll share their superpowers with us, because not only are they successful and accomplished and setting the bar high as role models, but they also are mothers and have got that work-life balance, or not. So starting with, I'd like to introduce Yuko Tashiro. And Yuko is currently the chairperson for Accordia Golf, a company with 170 golf courses and 27 driving ranges with almost 10,000 employees. My perception of golf here has been that it's kind of a man's world. So I was really kind of amazed that, she is chairing this amazing company. She served as a president CEO until March 2021, and then in April of 2021, she became the chairperson. Her first job was with KPMG. She got her CPA, and she then also worked for General Electric in 2000 when the legendary Jack Welch was chairman. She was the first leader for General Electric's Women Network in Japan. She became the CFO at Golf Resort under Ripplewood US-based fund in 2003, then working at a golf resort in Miyazaki for 2 years. She later joined Aon, a global insurance intermediary company, in 2005 as COO and CFO for Aon Holdings in Japan. Today, juggling her role at Accordia Golf, she currently sits on the board for McDonald's Japan and Yamaha Motor Company. She's also written a book called Shine, which is a great title, and is committed to supporting women in developing their careers and mentoring Japanese women from various companies. She also wants to make golf more enjoyable for women, children, and seniors. You can count me in on that one. She also volunteered for many years after the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, which is most incredible. And to Yuko's left is Katrina Lake. So Katrina is the founder and current chairperson of Stitch Fix. She founded Stitch Fix, and it's actually on the NASDAQ. And she shared that with me, SFIX, if you'd like to fund. In 2011, it served as chief executive officer from its inception until August 2021. During Katrina's tenure as CEO, the company grew from $0 to over $22 billion in revenue. Wow. Leveraging less than $50 million in venture capital. When she took the company public in 2017, she was the youngest female founder CEO to do so at age 34. The company was valued over $6 billion when she transitioned to chairperson in 2021. Katrina serves on the board and on the audit committee of Grubhub from 2015 to 2021. Okay. When the company was acquired by Just Eat, Katrina is also on the board of Glossier, a beloved skincare and makeup brand. Love that brand. And prior to founding Stitch Fix, Katrina managed the blogger platform Polyvore, a digital community in the fashion space, which was acquired by Yahoo in 2015. She holds a BA in economics from Stanford University and MBA from Harvard University. So as you can see, to my right are like amazing superpower women. So thank you, and we will have a question answer later, maybe the last 15 minutes or so. But I'm going to start by asking questions, and think if you have anything you'd like to ask. At the end, we'll be doing some question answer. And by the way, we did not plan being all white, but this is what success means, right? We all looked at each other and went, okay, this is a good lesson. So first I'm going to ask Yuko-san, onegaishimasu. And by the way, does everybody, is Japanese, English is fine? No, there is no, between the three of us, we figured we do speak Nihongo and English, so if there's anything that's not quite clear, let us know. So, Yuko-san, question for you.
Thank you, Rona. Thank you, everybody, being here today. I do not speak English normally, and it may be a little difficult for me sometimes, so please excuse that. And my name is Yuko Tashiro. I came through a long journey to build my career. I was born in 1954 in Kagoshima, Japan, a very rural country, and actually dropped out of high school, almost dropped out of high school. So I couldn't go to college in Japan. So I came to Tokyo, met an American person, and got married when I was 19. So I really didn't fit in school system in Japan. This was 1960, very traditional, and Japanese society in which women could not really have a career at that time. So I went to the state and had children and was a housewife for 6 years. So everybody wonders why I'm sitting here today, being a housewife for 6 years in Ohio. Actually, my husband was from Ohio. So I went to Ohio, and there was no Japanese culture. So it was just, American society with, Ohio was really influenced by Detroit automotive industry. So it was a manufacturing environment. And of course, there's no Japanese, and I was living there. And my life, just opportunity, I was given a lot of opportunities, and I have met many great people. I think that's how I came through my career. But I met a woman from Japan, and she had 2 children, and she asked me if I want to take college classes. She wanted to go to college, and she said, "Can we exchange childcare?" So I didn't think anything of it. I just took, the proposal and start going to take classes at the college. and found out studying is very, very enjoyable. This was my first time at age 26. First time I thought, oh, studying gives me enjoyable, moment. And so I went to college for 6 years, and throughout the college, I am so appreciative to American society, which gave me opportunity to go to college, first of all. And then I was in Ohio, so there was no Japanese community. I didn't know how to get a job after college. So I decided to have some kind of professional skill and start studying for becoming accountant. When I was going to graduate, my dream was to get a job at a local accounting firm and have a part-time job maybe for a busy season. Then my job would be secured. That was my idea. But how it turned out to be was I met a KPMG partner right before I graduated from school, and he offered me a job. And he said, "Can you speak Japanese?" So I said, "Yes." And he said, "We need people who can speak Japanese now." What happened was this was mid 1980. Automotive companies like Toyota, Honda, Nissan, all were establishing manufacturing facilities in the state. So they needed help. Japanese companies, larger companies like Toyota had enough human resources who can speak English, but smaller companies didn't have people who can speak English. So coming to Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, they needed somebody to support the engineers to establish factories in the state. So my job really, I was given a good opportunity, but I was living in northern Ohio, and they said, "Can you move to Kentucky? Toyota's coming to Kentucky." I had husband, children, and it was a very difficult decision for me. But I really thought about it, discussed with my husband, and my husband agreed to move to Kentucky. So this was my first job, and I took my family to Kentucky, started to be a CPA. My career went very well because there are more and more Japanese companies started to locate in Midwest area. So I worked at KPMG for 15 years, became a partner in 9 years, and had a lot of great responsibilities, such as becoming a service partner. And also I started playing golf. Not thinking this will lead to my career today, but I am not good at physical, activities at all. I rather stay home and read books. But this was for business reasons because those Japanese companies executives had wanted to play golf. There was no entertainment in Midwest in 1980s.
Yeah.
So everybody played golf when they came to Midwest. And this was, for me being a CPA, this was great entertainment. So that I start playing golf. And for the first 5 years, I thought, God, this is such a painful thing to do. I had to spend whole day on Sunday going out. And actually, I'm the only woman usually playing golf with men. So it was not enjoyable. But after 5 years, I found out I liked playing golf. So, I continued, and I have been playing golf for 30-some years now. But that's how I started playing golf. So, when I started playing golf, started to become a CPA, it was very difficult. I have been housewife, so I was staying home, going to school, but staying home most of the time. And my children really had a hard time for me becoming a professional all of a sudden and not being home. So I really had to decide after like 1 year, what do I want to do? I asked myself, what do I want to do? Because, I felt guilty not spending time with my children, but my job required a lot of hours, So I really thought about it and came to the conclusion my daughters will be gone in 10 years and I'll be in early 40s. What do I do with my life? So my decision was I'll put job as my priority and go through. And I was very lucky. My husband was very understanding. He took care of my children. My children probably felt somewhat neglected by mother, never showed up on certain events at school, but they really understood at the end. So we really have a good relationship now. Yeah.
That's great, Yuko-san.
Yeah.
It's so impressive to think that you arrived in Kentucky. You told me like in the 70s. And by the way, she says she doesn't speak English. Really? I mean, honestly.
Well.
But no, it is. And it sounds like everything's sort of aligned for you. And, maybe.
Thank you. But it just takes a little time sometimes because.
Well, I think you're
yeah.
perfect. So, but it is pretty amazing, that, would you say that you felt in many ways you were there at the right time? I mean, I think that early
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
the U.S.-Japan relationship.
Timing is always
Yes.
really good for me. But when opportunity comes up, I really gave a thought and tried to figure out what to do. And most of the time I took the job. I didn't select what I do most of the time. The only time I selected what I want to do is when I came back to Japan. And when I went to Tohoku to support tsunami damaged businesses.
which is very incredible.
So those are the only 2 times. And other times that opportunity came up,
Yeah.
I just have to decide what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
really great to see that, I often say sort of in a career that you kind of assume you think you know what your path is, but you have to be open to opportunities that may come your way, because it can actually take different turns and all that. So it sounds like you've always been very open and I think you also have a potential audience here for golf, because, for more women getting involved in golf. So anyway, thank you, Yuko, and we'll touch a little bit more shortly, but I did want to hear from
Sure.
Katrina Lake, who, how many people know what Stitch Fix is? Oh, yeah, I have to tell you, it was such a buzz. Everybody was talking about Stitch Fix, all my friends. But Katrina, we'd love to hear a little about your background and how you sort of got started in your path and as a founder of Stitch Fix. So
yeah. Hi, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you, everybody. It's fun to have a packed room for this. I actually grew up in San Francisco, and so my connection to Japan is that my mom is from Japan. She's from Tokyo, and so at home we spoke Japanese, or she spoke Japanese with us. And in San Francisco, it's a huge Asian community. And so unlike Ohio or Kentucky, there's a big Japanese community. And I went to a public Japanese bilingual elementary school. I went to Nihongo Gakko on the weekends. And so I feel really grateful to have had that kind of international, kind of relevant to me, cultural exposure throughout my childhood that, is still a really important part of who I am now. In terms of Stitch Fix, I started Stitch Fix, honestly, I was a little bit of an accidental entrepreneur. I went to college thinking I wanted to be pre-med, that I wanted to be a doctor. I ultimately, I was volunteering in a hospital, and it's kind of shallow, so I don't like admitting this, but it's true. I was just in the hospital, and just the environment of being in the hospital and wearing gloves all the time, and just, I don't know, bodily fluids being around and whatever. I really had this moment of I don't know that this should be my workplace for the rest of my life. It just felt like I don't know if I can make this commitment. And going to medical school and whatever is a huge commitment. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll do something. I had majored in economics just because I liked it in college. And so I thought maybe I'll do something in business and can kind of figure out this medicine thing later. And so I did some consulting consulting, and fast forward a few years, we were at a place where data is so easily accessible, and data, the technology and just how fast you can process data and make use of data was rapidly accelerating. And so there's a real opportunity to say, like, what are some of these kind of older categories that were not touched by tech historically, where using technology can make a big difference. And so, one that I saw intimately was like, I'm 5'2", and there's a lot of clothes on the planet that are beautiful but will never look good on me. And I have a sister who is a buyer who's really into fashion, and she would she'd text me like, this just went on sale, you should buy this, I found this new brand, it's awesome. And so it was a great experience for me to be able to have that sister. But I also had this moment of realizing, like, a lot of this can be algorithmic. Like, I think, there's a lot of, you can cluster people that have similar tastes. You can, you can even just use simple filtering around people's height. And so, it felt like there was a real opportunity to use data to be able to make the process of buying clothes much more seamless and frankly, better for the planet too, in a more waste reductive way, to be able to find the right thing for the right person more efficiently. So that was the kind of idea behind Stitch Fix, and yeah, it went from a small thing that I kind of started before I graduated from business school to
A giant thing.
to being, we have, I think, 11,000 employees, and yeah, a much kind of bigger thing. And I moved into the chairperson role just, I guess, over a year ago, which has just interesting timing, just with all that's happened with the economy in the last year. But it was definitely kind of, I think, the right thing. And along the way, as you mentioned, I had 3 kids. So I have 3 boys who are 6, almost 4, and 1.
Yeah, pretty amazing, right? An inspiration, as we can say. So I'm curious, Katrina, do you feel that the business sort of just evolved, or did you actually have this vision for yourself as making, such a big impact, or was it something from a passion that slowly sort of became successful without you even being aware that it would be as big as it is?
I never, and when I say I was an accidental entrepreneur, like, truly, like, I just thought it was really, the idea of using data with apparel is really
Right.
interesting. Like, I interviewed at, like, the Gap, and, like, in the IT department or something. It made no sense. But, I would have happily,
Amazing.
if Stitch Fix had existed, I would have happily worked at Stitch Fix, honestly. Like, I was not like, born an entrepreneur. I didn't,
Right.
I don't know that I had any entrepreneurial tendencies, but like, the opportunity for it became, like, so glaringly obvious that it was really by process of elimination, where I was like, okay, like, if this doesn't exist, like, I guess I can do this myself. And so, so I really, like, I never went into this thinking I wanted to be like a business titan, or frankly, that I even, like, wanted to take a company public. Like, those really weren't my goals when I started the company. But, the opportunity for it, I felt like, was really obvious. In the early days, it was very hard to raise venture money. But, even then, like, my confidence really wasn't shaken, because, like, I had a business degree. Like, you could look, like, the numbers work. The unit economics were great.
Right.
Like, people were, the business grew to being, I think, at least $250 million without us putting basically any marketing dollars behind it. Like, it was just growing through word of mouth. Like, the opportunity was so clear, and the product market fit was there.
Right.
And so,
It was
I
brilliant.
think in some ways, well, I don't know. There's nothing special about it. I think I just was lucky enough to have the privilege of being able to have access to resources to start something that I think many people could have thought of and could have
Right,
created. And so, to the point of luck, I think I was doing it at the right time and happened to meet the right people. And so I feel really privileged that I got to be the one to do it. But, I think the concept of it, you tell people today, like, the concept of it makes so much sense. And people are like, of course I would want that in my life. And so, I think once we started getting that traction, it was, I could have that conviction that, like, this deserves to exist in the world. And I felt very lucky to shepherd that.
Well, I'm sure a lot of women and men thank you for that concept that, evolved. So Yugo-san, it's interesting, because when you started your career, of course, I think there probably wasn't this whole digital world at the time, and I would probably say a little bit more of a traditional corporate environment.
Yeah.
So curiously, did you always, as little girls, did you think of yourself as a leader? Did you think that you would be, leading companies and so many employees, and or did you think it sort of evolved as well? Because I think with Katrina, she's talking that it kind of evolved into something big and successful. But did you have this vision for yourself?
I never thought I would be a business person.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just like to read. I like to be myself. I still enjoy being myself. So
So something triggered, and it's interesting because for those of you who know me, I do like to talk. And believe it or not, there was a time that I was shy. I wouldn't talk at meetings. And people are sort of like, really? But, I kind of share that. And it's funny because I never saw myself, sort of in a more executive position. But it just sort of evolved. And I became more comfortable, as I took steps in my different positions and companies that I had been part of that allowed me to do so. So, I'm just, for those of you out there, who may question, like, do I have the pizzazz to get out there and become, powerful businesswomen? I think, it's possible because you're kind of saying that you never imagined yourself. And look where you are today. Really setting kind of a role model and example and writing books, to inspire.
well, my book really is about giving advice to Japanese women who doesn't think they are qualified or they can really go up corporate ladder. It's all about yourself, and it's all about how you feel, I think. And it's nothing special. If you look at men around you, are they superstars?
Of course they are.
I'm talking
Come
about
on, Fred, you can
compared to yourself.
you're outnumbered here.
Well, I mean, if you look at women, 50 men,
Yeah.
they should have equal IQs.
Absolutely.
Actually, Japanese women, I mean, as far as gender gap, research shows there's no gender gap in Japan as far as education. What does that mean? And then the result of the total gender gap is 116th in the world.
No.
So the Japanese society is not utilizing women's, power or education. I mean,
Right.
we are wasting money for educating women, but not utilizing.
Right,
That's how I see
right.
it. It's really the society realizing that women can have equal ability, and men doesn't even think about it. If you look at men, they don't even think, can I become a career man? Can I become a business person?
It's sort
But
of their path.
somehow
You're right.
women ask themselves, can I be like that? Can I go up? Can I be a manager?
Yeah.
And yes, most of the women can be managers.
And it's wonderful because I think so many women, and there many are in this room, I know, and we saw them on stage. And yesterday there was a sustainability. We look at Suzanne Basala, who followed after the passing of Irene Hirano. I mean, incredible role models, and it is so inspiring. And I think there is something that if we tap into, we really can. And interesting enough, yesterday there was a kind of a session, and there were a lot of women. We all took a picture together, and one of the guys says, "僕たち頑張んなきゃいけないね." In other words, we got to really kind of power up here. But I think that yes, Japan does have still a long ways to go in many ways. And I do know that for myself, when I'd visit my Japanese grandmother and my aunt and uncle here in Tokyo, I'd spend 3 months here every summer. And I went to a very progressive university, Berkeley, and it was the time for women's right, and I'd come and I'd talk about women's right, and they say, "Mama, Rona, please, you're a little too opinionated. Nobody's going to ever marry you." So, I was sort of crushed by that. But, I have to say that, it's obviously something in my Japanese heritage too, and I think we talked about it this morning, the kind of inherent, the gambaru, that Japanese kind of culture that really kind of, pulled ourselves through. But I'm curious in terms of challenges, because I'm sure along your journey there were some challenges along in business, whether it was, gender bias or business challenges that really you question yourself. Katrina, this is something that comes to mind that was really quite difficult, and how did you navigate through it?
I mean, there are like countless things. And I mean, it's interesting that the education thing in Japan and, and I think we're acting as though the US is so much better. But like,
Yeah.
I think US is like, I grew up during a time of like girl power and like girls can do anything and like everyone can do anything. And like, it's just like the opportunities are not equal. And it's just true, like in the US too. And so, I think that like, in the US, it's like we have similar things. Women are more educated. Like, we have the same dynamic. And I feel like Japan has a reputation of not, being super friendly for women in business. The US somehow has a positive brand, but like the reality is like, the US has a lot of the same challenges. And, it's not like the US is providing lots of childcare to allow, dual income households. Like, there's a lot of challenges in the US, but, I think that in general, like I think the challenges, and I would say the challenges are more nuanced because I think while people pretend that things are equal, the reality is like access to capital is not equal. Like I'm on the other side of a table, like pitching to people who don't look like me, people who don't buy women's clothes, people who don't have a passion for the market. Like the number of times that I had a VC that said like, like I'd like to invest in things that like, I make 1 or 2 investments a year and I want to invest in things that I really love and that I wake up thinking about. And like, I can't wake up thinking about women's clothes. And it was just like, it was like, okay, like, so, and of course there are women venture capitalists and they're great and supportive, but like, at the end of the day, if like the only capital that's available to me are like the people who are waking up thinking about women's dresses, like, the reality is that like there's, and that's not just true in the venture world. Like it was true as a public company. Like as a public company, I would say it was almost worse when I was when I was a public company CEO. And by the way, like my president, COO is a Black man. My CFO is an Asian man. Like we would have all these jokes on our roadshow because like the one white guy on our team was in IR. And I mean, it was just like, even just you think about like what the mayor was just saying of like, you like when you're sitting across, you have an assumption of trust when somebody across the table looks like you and an assumption of distrust when somebody across the table doesn't. And so, even as a public company, I mean, every single quarter, like we're battling this. And so, I think like we have to be, I think we have to be just like really, really pushing for, in a lot of these opportunities, it's not that, these things are happening behind closed doors, I guess is more of what I'm trying to say of just like, and maybe it is learning to golf or it is whatever, but it's like, a lot of times like, when a public company is hot, it's because the investment banker has a good relationship with this person who then gets all these investors who are excited and momentum gets built and blah, blah, blah. And now this company is hot. And because that company is hot, that person is going to be rich and powerful. And like those systems continue. And so, I think it was, while I was very proud to be able to be the first and the youngest or whatever at that point in time, I think there's also a big burden of being the first because like the reality is like there's nothing special about me. Like there really isn't. Like I was kind of lucky, had the right thing, had some good education, but there are many, 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 many people before me that deserve to do that did not have the chance to do it. And so, I think now by the way, Whitney of Bumble is now the youngest one who now has that, and that's great. But at the same time, I think there is like this feeling of like, that's crazy that I was the first one to do this because like, I know I'm not the first capable person I'm just the one that was lucky enough to have the privilege and opportunity to do it.
I think she's being humble here, but no, but that's pretty. What about in terms of? I mean, did you have sleepless nights? I mean, being head of a public company, were there difficult decision making that you needed to make that maybe even question yourself, or that you just sort of your inner voice sort of took over and you had this superpower? What?
I mean, honestly, like I think one, and I'd be curious what Yuko-san's like perspective on this would be, but like I actually think one of being being kind of a first was in some ways kind of liberating, because like the reality is like there weren't a lot of other people who had done what I had done. And so just as examples, like when we were taking the company public, we were riding the S1, like I just had a baby, like I needed to pump. I would just like in the middle of this investment banking meeting be like, guys, I have to pump. I'm going to go into the room for 20 minutes. Do you want a 20-minute break or do you want me to dial in? And I would just like say these things out loud because, you look around the room and there are investment bankers and lawyers and people who I know either are going to have to pump like sometime, and like I don't want them to be sheepish and embarrassed at things like, and so there are all these things that like I could kind of like, not care, I guess, what other people think, and go ahead and do. And like when we went public, like the picture of us going public ended up going kind of viral on Twitter. And the reason for that was because I was holding my son, who at the time was 1 year old. And it's a longer story. We brought him to the IPO, and he was kind of sick, and he was crying, and so it was like better for me to hold him, and so we just did it while I was holding him, and I didn't really think much of it, but it became this kind of moment of like feeling like, okay, like this opportunity is available. And so I'm kind of wondering, I don't even remember what the question was.
No, but it's all good. It's all good. No, Katrina, it's all good. It's interesting because when I started, I worked for corporations. I worked for Hilton Hotels. I worked for W Hotels, and things are so much more progressive. I remember visiting Google headquarters, in Mountain View, and pulling up. I was looking for parking, and I see pregnant women with like the spaces right for them, and that never would have happened back when I kind of started my career. And even rooms to have, to pump and all that. That was a non-issue. You didn't have that. So Yuko-san, I'm sure you can kind of probably. In Kentucky, I probably don't imagine them even thinking about. Something on that line.
I was working in Kentucky and Ohio in 1980s and 1990s. So, it was all men business world. I was the only one in the meeting room. Most of the time, I'm the only woman everywhere. So, people didn't even think about diversity at that time. That was normal. So even in the state, I know after about 2000, like IBM started to promote women. Women politicians came in, but when I was in the U.S., it was all men's world. I came back to Japan, and I was shocked. It's like going back 30 years. Right? And still now, my company is male-dominated company, first of all. I became president in about 6 years ago. And until then, I was outside director, so nobody knew me. They looked at me and said, "Who is this woman?" So, I had to run the company, but, I didn't know anybody. All men was sitting there saying, "Who is this woman who doesn't have nothing to do with golf, coming in a company, becoming president?"
That's pretty impressive, I'd have to say.
But I think, having two different cultures, having different backgrounds, understanding different values really helps that situation. So I know how they feel about me. And I sometimes utilize that, this must be what they're thinking, so I'll do this.
So what is it that you feel about yourself, your little superpower, that you're able to navigate through that difficult time and, being viewed and probably being questioned a lot? Like, what is she doing in that position?
Right.
What is it that within you that has helped you sort of, how would you say, become strong and to have that sense of confidence to lead kind of with this difficult environment?
Well, my policy is always do best for my job. So I always say this is the best for the company. And if I'm determined, I let them say anything they want. I know what they're saying. She's so strange. She doesn't know what she's doing.
But she plays a good game of golf.
Yeah. And at the end, you just have to show the result. If result comes in, people understand. people follow. But until then, it's very difficult. And what we are trying to do nowadays is huge change management. That's why it's so difficult. People have different values, and we really have to break through people's value. I mean, this is not only women,
Right.
but it's races, and different sexual.
Orientation, yeah. I mean, they're certainly challenging. It's interesting how DEI has been such an important, issue in the United States, as we know. Sometime I actually, having gone to Berkeley in the 70s and all this, that I felt like maybe did we regress a little? Because these are issues that are still being talked about.
Yeah.
But, you're both amazing examples, I think, of really staying true to who you are and doing that work-life balance, which you both agree is not as easy all the time, I think. So if today you were to give advice to young women today who want to become successful, who want to achieve their goals and dreams, I mean, what advice would you have for them? From your experience?
So actually wasn't necessarily what I would have said, but I think your last question was really kind of asking about imposter bias of like, how do you maintain your confidence in these situations where others might be questioning your worth. Right. And like, I will say, like, having been on the inside, like being on the other side, like what I can tell you is like, you are this tall and all the people who might seem taller than you, like most of them have stilts of privilege. And like what I was able to do over time was like, I got to start learning like, oh, like that person is, like a senator's son. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, that afforded this person the privilege to get to this school. And then that afforded the person the privilege to get this job without interviewing for it. And like once you start like undoing those stilts of privilege, like you can almost have empathy for understanding why they must feel so threatened by you. And so like it's almost just like remembering that the people around you are average at best. And like a lot of times the things that are helping, the things that are creating their desire to make you feel unwelcome are actually a defense mechanism because like they feel threatened by you being there. And so it's weird for me to say that, like, I think for me to be able to start developing empathy for that and like just understanding a little bit of where that feeling comes from, like I think allowed me to like separate myself from those feelings. And I think part of like, I think part of what, when I say being the first was liberating, was like, I just kind of felt like, I don't have to fit any mold. Like I can just do this my way. And I do think that it's a little bit of a privilege of our generation versus the generation before us, when I think there was a need to manage like a man and be a CEO like a man. And there's a lot of pressure to kind of just fit into the mold of what kind of leadership was supposed to look like versus, I do think now there are like many different avenues to being great leaders, and that I think most like, and right now in this very moment, that people really understand that like vulnerability and authenticity and being yourself is really the best way to earn trust and to earn you become a good leader by earning the trust of the people that that you have the privilege of leading. And so I don't know that was any advice, but
no, definitely. I think touching on empathy, I often think that women have a lot of empathy and have kind of the sensory that can kind of detect with people. But you're right. I mean, being true to yourself. And at the end of the day, if there isn't trust, I mean, people aren't going to be leading. I'm following you, basically. So I think
and
that
actually maybe
does
the
answer
last
my
thing that
question.
I would say that I feel like was a little bit like, I don't know, instilled in my generation. And like, I just feel like there is this like, oh yeah, women can do it all. And I mean, people kind of use me as an example of like, oh, women can do it all. And like, it's just like an unrealistic expectation to have of yourself. Like, there were months that I went without working out. Like there were friends that like I had falling out with because like I didn't show up at their wedding. Like I still to this day feel awful about some of those things, but like those were prices that I had to pay in order to do what I'm doing. And born, similar to Yuko, like I have a husband who's been very, he works, but he's been flexible, he's been helpful, like he does as much, if not more, of the kids' stuff. And so, I think the reality is like we all have to give, and there are sacrifices in order to be able to achieve what we achieve. And, I wouldn't hold yourself to the standard of like, oh, like I can do everything and I'm going to do everything well. I think, at any point in your life, you're going to choose, I'm going to prioritize these things. I'm going to do these things well. Yuko spoke to that with her and her relationship with her children. And those are hard things to talk about, but they're real. And I think it's better to say that out loud versus have this facade that like, we're all super people.
Right. No, and I've heard that a lot from women who've also said the same thing, that, you have the standard, like I'm going to be perfect and I'm going to do everything. But in reality, you just have to accept that some things you're just going to have to let roll off your shoulders. It's not going to be perfect. And you just have to accept that and make it the best, Yuko-san, do you have something that you'd like to share in terms of words of wisdom?
Okay.
Well, I know your book, Shine, apparently covers a lot of that. So
Read Shine if you can read Japanese. One thing we really have to understand is men and women have different characteristics, as a nature. And, for example, women tend to be perfectionists. So if women cannot do 100% of housework, 100% child care, 100% work, she feels inferior. She feels guilty. But if you look at single man raising children, single father doesn't have guiltiness. I mean, what's the difference? We only have 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We only have, certain amount of time. So first, I would say, analyze your situation very objectively. What kind of situation am I in? What kind of company am I in? Who is my boss? What kind of family situation do I have? Then set a priority of what you want to do now, what you want to do 5 years later, what you want to do 20 years. I mean, just, think through those things and set your goal. And just another thing is really communicate. Again, this is a big change management for yourself, for the society, for your company. Because and change management is very painful. You have to understand that. It doesn't come easy. People have to sacrifice, people have to suffer, people have to change their values. So if you have Japanese male bosses, I mean, you have to understand, they don't understand. They don't want to change. It's very difficult for them. And even, your husband, you really have to do change management.
It's interesting because I'm working with, 200 Japanese, and I've actually worked for other Japanese companies in the past. And, that stereotype of the Japanese businessman has changed a lot too. I noticed with our company, a lot of the young Japanese, it's so great because they really value their family time. And, whereas before they were out drinking every night with the company, and, our guys are all about, their families now and coming home, and they really enjoy their time with their wife. And that's so refreshing to see. Although sometimes the company still does, have expectations. I think that, you do have to do a lot of corporate entertaining or maybe golfing, but that's a fun thing. So it is interesting. And I think pretty much it's, as you said, to kind of prepare yourself and, to kind of plan out, like you said, to think about, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Though I do feel, just from my personal experience, you have to kind of, you lay that out, and if you don't stay on that path, don't be hard on yourself, because sometimes opportunities come your way, that happened to you in Kentucky, or, with some of the companies that you had been part of that you didn't ever imagine, but you took and seized the opportunity. It was timing and aligned, and led you to where you are today. So
Right.
that's
I usually say, do your lifetime inventory once in a while.
that's
I mean, regularly.
good. I like that lifetime inventory.
And again, it's not easy. I mean, it's painful to make changes to other people. And first, change yourself. Change your value. Change your way of thinking.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I do think that, I'm just so happy to see some of the guys here, and I know some of you here who are just amazing men and so supportive of women. And, I talked to a number of people through the conference, and, they really are very supportive with women. I think they as partners, as colleagues, I think. So it's exciting to see. It's an exciting time. So given time, because I think, okay, it's 11:40. So I was thinking maybe 15 minutes of questions, and hopefully you have some great questions, how to get the good golf technique or whatnot. But does anybody have any questions? Royanne?
Oh.
Okay, and is there a mic that we can kind of pass, so?
Hello? Hello? Hi. It's a pleasure to meet you both. It was very inspiring to hear your stories, and I appreciate you guys being candid with your situations. The question I have is, I noticed a lot of the similarities is opportunity and luck, but my question is, what were you doing around those times for those opportunities to occur? And what can we do in the future for that too?
Yeah. So if you could, the question is just around opportunity and luck, and what can you do to be ready for those? And I think that's exactly right. Is like, there are a lot of things in your life you're not going to be able to control, but like the things you can control are like your readiness for those. And I do think, Yuko mentioned it, but I think, the people you surround yourself with, and I mean, this conference is probably a good place for that too. I think, to be able to, to do what you can to be able to surround yourself with people that you can learn from, people who are going to push you. I always say, and my like career advice in general is like, it's less about what company you work for, or even less about what job you take, as much as it is your manager. Like the number one reason that people leave their jobs is because they hate their manager. So like, of course, you want to choose a job where you love the manager, but also like that manager is often the one that's going to open up opportunities for you within that job or even outside. Many times people, leave a job and they bring their team with them, and that creates new opportunity. And so I think it really is around just like, making sure that you are surrounding yourself with, as incredible as people as you can. And then I think as you choose job opportunities, I really would focus on like, who are the managers that are going to be able to change the course of your career.
Very good question.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Kim Akishi, and I serve as Chief Growth Officer of a Silicon Valley-based tech startup. It's workflow automation for trucking. So the customers, our whole team is basically men. I'm basically 1 out of 2 women on our 40-person team, and all of our customers are practically men, 99%. And I'm in charge of building our sales org. Just hired 2 sales reps yesterday, both men, and typically they're older. So Katrina, your story resonates with your roadshow and execs. Our CEO is Swiss, but a gay white guy, and our COO, the other founder, is a Chinese person. So when we go out to do, customer talks and stuff, it's very interesting. People are like, "What are you doing in trucking?" So, and your story resonates with when people are looking at you during these road shows, and even if they don't say it, you kind of feel that, right? As a woman in an executive position. What tactical advice, I love what you said about empathy, kind of spinning it and saying, I need to build empathy for them. What sort of tactical communication advice do you have when hiring, training, recruiting and managing typically older men, and when your customer base is 99.99% men?
I would say always remember you are the boss. But don't say it. Just remember you are the boss and act like one.
So having that confidence.
Yeah.
Just want to amplify for everybody else, because
she's my hero, Tashiro-san. She kind of skirted over it, so you don't miss the fact that she was an outside director, a woman on this golf course thing, right? And then somehow magically she didn't mention it because she's being polite, but the head of the company suddenly wasn't there anymore. And she ascended, right, from the board to the running the company, didn't know anything about golf, was the CPA finance person, and showed up with a bunch of people who didn't know her and ran the company. And all she talks about is, I got the results, right? So when she says, don't forget you're the boss, she really means that,
Yeah.
right?
Presence.
Yeah, like start with that, right? And so it's so unusual because I've been in Japan for so long to see a Japanese woman, fully bilingual, went through all of that, has kids, right? And stepped down. So her path was not work her way up the career. It was be an outside director, come in and fix it, and then go back, right? It's amazing. So I just
That
needed
is
to
amazing.
I just make sure that everybody didn't miss that little
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
that she
Thank
mentioned.
you for
Right.
bringing that up. Yeah, I think probably when you say it's that presence that you need to kind of emanate, so they sort of understand, even without body language probably. I do want to say Royanne yesterday spoke at the members forum, and she was talking about, and who was, one of the board members and has been very involved with Japan Council. And I just have to quote, I just thought this was fabulous. She was talking about Irene Hirano and what a powerhouse she was. And she goes, she was a kick-ass woman. And I went, we're going to have a kick-ass woman panel tomorrow. So, yeah, it's great to see these women who are just truly, have this inner strength. And as you said, you kind of set the tone to being a
Well,
boss.
Another thing is, don't you feel sometimes that because you are woman, that client is nicer? That is an advantage. So there is not nothing in the world which is completely bad or good. You just have to. That is your skill. I think being a woman is one of your qualifications. So if you can utilize that power, you can use it too. So I think it goes both ways, but you just have to learn how to utilize what you have. Yeah.
Other questions? Ooh, lots of hands up there. Oh, hi, how are you?
Hi there. I guess really, the messages you had to say, it really, as someone said earlier, it really resonated with me. I myself am an accidental CEO, and it just fell into, I guess, the role fell into my lap just because of relationships. As a woman, I struggle with some of the things that you said. I think some of it is my upbringing. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and by parents who are pretty traditional. So I have a daughter, and I'm wondering, what can I do to help her and her generation of women so that we don't necessarily have to have this conversation? Because, like we've all heard, I think, men will take a position, even though, they won't even think about, like, am I qualified? Am I ready, right? Women will say, like, oh, I need to be this and I need to be that and I need to have this credential before they will step into that role. Do you have any advice as a mom, as a working mom, what we can do to help younger women so that they don't have the same type of struggles?
I don't know how much of this can be created. Like I have 3 kids, and it's like amazing how much is just nature. Like they just come out one way, and I'm not super convinced that I have a whole lot of impact on them. But I do think that as much as you can create environments where your children can feel a sense of self-confidence, I think that really is the ability to be able to not be shaken when somebody is asking you really annoying questions, and all those things, and the ability to be able to look around the room and be like, I deserve to be here. Like, I think that's all self-confidence. And so, whether, boys and girls, like, I think, it's just such an important thing to try to instill in kids. Like, how to do that, I'm all ears. Like, I can't pretend to know, but, I think I feel really grateful that, like, and I actually give credit to my obacha, my Japanese grandmother, who, like, she was in an arranged marriage, and she was like, she was like, I don't want this life in Japan. And so like her ticket to getting out of that was to raise two very independent daughters, and my mom and her sister. And, she raised them to be like, you're going to go to college, you're going to go to graduate school, you're going to go to the US, there's way more opportunity for you there. And, that was kind of her way of doing it. But my Japanese obachan was very like, she just didn't really care what people thought about her. And she had her own opinions and perspectives. And so I think, the more we can all role model that, so that our children also feel like, they don't have to be one specific way, and that they are enough, and that who they are matters. Like, I think that I feel really grateful that I had a role model for me in that.
It's great. So
And,
self-esteem, in a way.
Well, my daughters are very independent. And just because I didn't do anything for them.
I love this advice.
Good advice.
And I agree with Katrina that children have their own nature, and it's very difficult to change. And one thing is, you feel confident about yourself, not feel guilty, not taking care of them, not to try to create an environment for them. It's not good. Give them opportunity to go out and meet a lot of people, experience a lot of things, but try not to, make something, set for them.
That's actually such good advice, because like I think especially in the US, and I mean I'm in the middle of this, like I have 3 kids, like there is this like we're going to give kids all these opportunities, and we're going to give kids these things on a silver platter. And I think in reality, a lot of the way that I gained confidence was actually by like failing. It was by I don't know, like getting fired from a job. It was by trying to run for something in my school, whatever. And like I'm like still traumatized of this like speech that I gave. It was like so bad. I was so nervous. It was so bad. But like those are the things that like you fall down, you get yourself up, you're like, I can do this. And like those really, I think that I think there's so much when you, especially when you have the resources to be able to like help your kid be successful. It's so tempting to do that, but I think the more you can give kids room to fail and then room to grow and learn from that, like I think that's a lot of what builds confident people.
Good advice there.
Oh.
Any questions? I saw some hands
Ron.
back there.
Hold on, sorry. I have one. Oh, okay. Hi. My name is Stephanie Nitahara, and Katrina, I was really struck by what you were saying around you could be working at the best company in the world, but if your manager is like gatekeeping opportunities for you, it doesn't really make a difference, right? It's going to make it really hard for you to get that next opportunity, so to look for a great manager. So I was wondering, for the both of you as women in leadership, how you're setting culture of inclusivity and opening doors for other women or historically marginalized folks to take like those next opportunities or to seize those next opportunities, because I think there's a lot of folks in this room who are also in leadership or might be in a position to do that. So I was just wondering what kind of culture or strategies you all are employing.
I get asked kind of this question around diverse teams a lot. Like, I mean, my team at Stitch Fix, when I was running Stitch Fix, was incredible. It was, I mean, at least for corporate America, it was very diverse. And, a lot of other CEOs, especially after the happenings of like George Floyd, and as people had greater awareness of the mistakes they were making, I had a lot of people come to me and say like, how can I build a more diverse team? And, I mean, honestly, like I didn't have a whole lot of great answers besides like, diversity begets diversity. Like inclusivity in a lot of ways is actually like the result of having a diverse team. Like, realistically, realistically, like you can't be an inclusive company if you're all white men. Like it's just like it's just not possible. And so like to be able to create a sense of belonging in the culture, like you actually have to have a diverse team and you actually have to have a diverse management team. And like people don't like hearing that because that seems unchangeable. And I get it. Like it's hard. Like you might have 9 white men who are all great performers that are like your management team. And, you know, it's not enough to just have like a pipeline of more diverse talent if you don't have diverse leadership at the top. And it's a really hard answer, especially in Japan. It's a really hard answer because a lot of women have not been allowed the opportunity to grow in the ranks. But, you know, I really believe that like that it starts from the top. And, you know, for me, I was really fortunate. I would also say that like that notion of stilts of privilege, like I started realizing that kind of early on. And so for me, at Stitch Fix, this is one practical tip, is like at Stitch Fix, when we, I mean, this was kind of before even all the, you know, talk about diversity or as much of diversity, and really like to be able to look at differences as additive. And I kind of look at my upbringing as part of this too, like growing up in a bilingual, bicultural household, like I saw differences as being a good thing. And so to be able to create that as part of your company's hiring policy of like, we are looking for people who are culture add rather than culture fit. Like somebody who's just blending into your culture is not actually like, what's the point of bringing somebody to the table that thinks like everybody else? Like that's not creating any additional value. And so to be able to change your interview processes, to be looking for culture add versus culture fit, like that makes a big difference. And then also I think being able to understand that like when somebody from a marginalized background is sitting in front of you, like that person is incredible. Like that person has overcome a lot in order to even just be sitting at that table. And like you are hiring for future potential. Like you are not hiring for whatever past resume in school or whatever this person went to. And so I think to change the mindset as you're looking for people around like what is the trajectory that they're on, and like, you know, somebody who came from down here and is sitting in front of you is on a crazy trajectory, right? And versus like somebody who was born on third base who like might not even make it to home plate, like come on, you know.
Yeah.
And so like sorry, that's rude, but like it's, you know, I think it's just changing the mindset as you're interviewing and changing the mindset of your recruiting org to be able to start to look for you know, to look for differences and to be able to, you know, try to reward those, I guess, rather than shy away and be afraid of those, I think are helpful, I think, in trying to build a more diverse team.
Yeah, I think mindset, very much so. I think so many companies really had to sort of go within and see, particularly with all that, as you said, with George Floyd. And I think everybody, company was really, you know, reflecting and seeing how they could change, which is so important. So thank you for sharing that. Yuko-san, do you want to answer from your perspective?
Well, for my company, it's still in progress. I mean, there was no Japanese, I mean, there's no woman management team at all when I joined the company. So we have middle managers coming up from women, but all the executives are men still. So I still have to work on that. I mean, it's a huge change management. I mean, and we still, we recruit from colleges, and probably about, I would say, only 10% women apply for job at golf courses. So it is very, very difficult to change my company. When I was at GE, Jack Welch really, tried to change the culture because in 2000, Jack was criticized by Wall Street Journal that GE is a man-dominated company. And he was so upset, and he told the GE around the world, we need to promote women. So all over the world, we set up a GE Women's Network, which was supposed to be bringing up women executives. As far as US, they are very successful. In about 5 years, they had so many women executives. Not in Japan so much, but still, I mean, Japanese president at GE is woman right now. So
It's good to hear. We like hearing that.
I think it really takes a lot of forceful activities to change the company's culture. And sometimes, I'm the only one out of 10,000 right now. So it's a bit difficult, but little by little, we just have to go, forward, I think. And also sat at McDonald's Japan. And that company, because of the diversity of McDonald's, we have directors from all over the world. We have women. So the environment is quite different. Yeah. Yamaha is a Japanese typical manufacturing company. So that is a completely different environment too. So each company, I think, has different stages. But again, it's a change management, painful change management that everybody has to accept and work on.
Great.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure you'll be a great mentor, and hopefully your book will be out there to sort of change things for a lot of women. So any other questions? Because I did see some hands. Oh, goodness, we're almost at, 1 minute. Is there a 1 minute question? Yes.
Hi, I'm Danielle Higa from Seattle, and this is giving me life. I love this talk. Could ask you so many questions, but yeah, so I'm a consultant and I do executive search and strategy for nonprofits, but I notice a lot of my clients are relating to the culture topic, are always wanting to shift the culture in their orgs when they're trying to hire new talent, but they're always feeling, there's a little bit of a paralyzing moment for them. Do you have any advice that you could give to help push people or push your own teams into that kind of direction of action or making them feel empowered?
It's a hard question. I mean, I would come back to this more culture fit thing of just what is, what is the language that they're using and what is getting in their way. And I think in general, if you're trying to encourage them to, kind of be making better, more diverse hiring decisions, I think that culture fit, culture add thing tends to resonate for people.
Yugo-san, do you want to? 1 minute. We'll wrap it up. Yeah, we are almost. But I would like to just say, really, thank you very much for joining this panel. As you can see, we have two amazing women who I think really have been very open and sharing their experience. And thank you, Katrina. Yeah. And so, thank you, Yuko. Thank you, Katrina. And I know they will be around, so if any other questions, don't hesitate. But thank you, and hopefully this panel inspired all of you here. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.